All right, so welcome again. My name is Juliet Nash. I'm our Community Animal Training Manager. And tonight's topic is litter box troubleshooting. So cats in boxes might not seem like a difficult concept or pairing in the world of cats in boxes. There's memes all over the internet. But we know that sometimes this is a significant struggle for different families. Relinquishment to shelters, oh my gosh, the number one reason for relinquishment to shelters is behavior. And in cats, the number one behavior concern is litter box issues. So it is a significant problem with cats. And this is both initial relinquishment and return relinquishment. It's significant in both cases. So if you didn't already know, cats are naturally clean animals, and burying their eliminations in dirt or other substrate is a naturally occurring behavior. Once cats are introduced to a litter box, they typically don't need any additional training. You just pop a little kitten into a box and they figure it out pretty quickly. When I've brought in cats from my yard, community cats from outdoors, they've also taken to a box very quickly, even if they were only in my house for a short period of time. So why do litter box issues arise? Well, there are quite a few reasons, as it turns out. The first is issues with the box itself. And the secondary and third reasons are medical and behavioral. Now, we're going to dig into all of these issues in more detail throughout the presentation, but we're going to start with how we can avoid misuse in the first place and focus on that very first bullet point, which are issues with the box itself. The first thing we want to do is set up for success. So we're going to talk about where your boxes are, what types of litter boxes you have, what is inside of it, how many you have, how often you're cleaning it, who is inside of it, and why you made changes to the litter box. So location is really important when it comes to placement of your litter boxes. You want to make sure your litter boxes are in spaces that your cats are already comfortable. Many cats prefer boxes that are against a wall as opposed to sitting away from it. A lot of cats don't like direct social pressure while they're in the box, so not facing a doorway, for example, being a bit more secluded or turned to the side might be more comfortable for them. You want to find spaces that have good airflow, so keeping your cat box in a closet may not be ideal for them because more odor is going to get trapped in that space. May not be great for your closet either. You want to make sure the litter boxes are in areas they already access normally. So for example, you don't want the litter box, at the lowest floor of your townhome if your cat never goes down there. Or you don't want it maybe in the laundry room where it's loud and potentially scary, especially if your cat startles easily or is prone to being more fearful. High traffic areas can also be challenging. If you have multiple litter boxes, they should be in different rooms. Having all the boxes in the same space means that you have lots more odor in that space. It also means there may be more social pressure from other cats in the home and some interactions or altercations around that. You want to also give them other areas they can travel to. So they shouldn't all be in the same space just because they're spending time in different parts of the house. You want to make sure that you're not putting their litter box right next to their food and water. You probably wouldn't want to eat your meals in the restroom either, neither do your cats. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're adjusting a cat to a new home, for example, they've just come to your house and they're living in a bathroom for a couple of days, that's an obvious short-term exception. But long-term, you do want to have their food and their litter boxes in different locations. And keep in mind the location of your litter boxes and how many boxes you have may change with your cat's health, mobility, and behavioral needs. So what type of box do you have? There are so many options out there, and we'll start with uncovered boxes. In general, with uncovered boxes, you have more sizing and shape options. This can be really helpful if you have larger cats. If you have a cat with mobility issues, a low front entry box can be really helpful for them. So they're getting in and out more easily with less discomfort. If you have a cat who's a very enthusiastic digger, but doesn't like a high-sided box, or I'm sorry, doesn't like an enclosed box, a high-sided box can be a nice solution for that. It also helps with airflow. Obviously, there are no odors trapped inside an open box. It does give them a full view of their environment, which offers less potential privacy and protection, but for some cats helps them feel more secure because they can see what's going on around them. There are no surprises. And one thing to note with your uncovered boxes is enthusiastic diggers can be messy. So the high sides may or may not save you. That might be when you'd switch to a covered box. So there are many styles of covered boxes also, some of which hide the box. There are lots of fun furniture options out there. And in some cases with furniture, I should point out, you can have an open box that is placed inside a piece of furniture that still encloses it. So it's not quite as restrictive as some cats feel about a typical enclosed box, but it still keeps things a bit more contained. There are fewer styles of covered boxes that work for cats who are larger or have reduced mobility. There are certainly some, but you do have fewer options, especially if you're dealing with both decreased mobility and larger cats. Covered boxes do offer some privacy and protection, although some cats find them a bit restrictive. They can reduce litter mess from digging. They do trap odor a little bit more, and to help make that less of an issue, remove the plastic flap at the front of it if your covered box came with one. I have yet to meet a cat who is happy to walk through that plastic flap, so just get rid of it. They're really easy to remove. Another really great covered box option are top entry boxes. And these are great for larger cats because you can just go buy a large plastic storage bin with a lid, cut a comfortable for your cat-sized hole in the top, and there you go. You have a litter box that's pretty easy to clean. It's easy for your cat to get into. And if you have a multi-pet home and you have dogs who occasionally enjoy a little snack, it can help deter dogs that are trying to access a litter box. So continuing on with types of boxes, we have the old school boxes that all of us are probably familiar with, where you are the scooper and you do all the work. These are often ideal boxes for many, many cats, but especially for those who are easily spooked. And they're pretty inexpensive to replace. There really isn't much you would do as far as repair. You would just replace the box. We now have a large number of automatic boxes available, from the more simple ones that have been around for at least the last 15 to 20 years to the more fancy robotic ones that are around, have been around the last 5 or so years. These boxes clean themselves after each use. Again, there's many different types of styles. The ones that are fully enclosed tend to be on the smaller side, and even the ones that are open tend to be a little bit smaller also, so it may not be a great fit for your cat. Some of these automatic boxes have really cool features, such as collecting health metrics. So you can tell the app that comes with the litter box how many cats you have, what their names are, how much they weigh, and it will track the weight of each cat. So you can tell if there are any changes over time, which is really great for tracking health, since most cats don't love getting on scales unless you've done training around that. That said, if your automatic box breaks, it's definitely more expensive to replace. And while you won't need to replace it as often as you would a traditional box, it is still a bit more costly. And you may have to do some training to help your cats be comfortable with an automatic box. So we're going to show you some quick videos of when I first introduced my cats to an automatic litter box. This style, just for reference, is no longer produced, and it was very small. Our cats were okay with it, but it was quite small. So here we go.
Oh, good girl, Amethyst. Good job, my love. Good girl. So we've got some treats in there already. It's their very first time interacting with the box. Wrong way, Saf. Silly girl. Good girl, Amethyst. Good girl. So she's eating those treats in there. Giving them a chance to explore this without any pressure, without anything in there that looks like litter yet, and kind of not being in the litter box space allows them to get comfortable with this, where it doesn't feel like change or anything threatening yet. And of course, we're not going to turn it on or let it move initially, probably the first few times they use it as well.
Now, I will point out, these cats were trying to get into this litter box before we'd even finished building it, as you can probably tell. And then once we did have it fully built, we continued on.
So Sapphire has now entered the box. She's gotten some treats. Checking it out. Amethyst has been back in there once also. But they're feeling pretty good about it, looking pretty calm. When we move this into the room where we keep their primary litter box in a couple days, we're going to leave it in this space, probably without litter for the first day and then with litter for a day or two. And we want to keep the old box there. That way they have the option of using whichever one they prefer. With this robotic box, we can also we can trigger it manually, so they're not going to be surprised by it moving. So we're able to make sure that they're hearing it with the door closed perhaps before they're ever hearing it in the room with it for the first time or seeing it move or getting spooked. We want to reduce that potential as much as possible.
All right. So what is in the box? There are many different types of cat litters out there. There's in fact an astounding number of choices out there, and that choice matters. Once you find a litter that works both for your cat's preference and their health, stick with it. Now, something to note is dusty or lightweight litters may carry increased respiratory health concerns, so definitely check with your vet, especially if your cat has a history of respiratory illnesses. You definitely want to check that out with your vet if you do have any concerns. So good things to be aware of. Let's dig into those different types of litter. So probably the most common type of litter out there are clumping litters. This is a litter where both liquid and solid waste will form clumps when the two make contact. It's easy to scoop, and it's usually small grain textures made out of clay, corn, walnut shells, other organic materials. Tracking is a bit more likely with non-clumping litter because as it touches things that are wet, it will stick to it. So you may get a little bit on their paws or on their rear, depending on how they're using the box and how much digging they're doing. So you may get some litter tracking. That's usually pretty easily resolved if you put like a tracking mat outside, so it will fall off their paws as they get out. But it is something to be aware of, especially if you have longer haired cats. It's oftentimes better for odor control, and that is in large part because you are removing both the liquid and solid waste from the box every time you clean it. And you would want to do a full box change, so removing all of the litter monthly is ideal. Now, non-clumping litter is when you remove the solid waste only, and the liquid waste is absorbed by the litter itself. It's a bit safer for kittens because they're less likely to accidentally ingest the litter while they're kind of figuring out what to do in the box. It's usually a little bit less expensive. You have an even wider variety of textures, from silicone gels to synthetic crystals, clay, paper, wood, and other organic material. It may be small grains. It may also be small clumps. It may be pellets. And again, it may be crystals. It's usually very low as far as litter tracking. And shifting around the litter in the box can help with odor control, but because the liquid waste is being absorbed, you're going to want to do a full box change every 7 to 10 days. So a bit more frequent. Scented versus unscented litters. It's really important to note that scented litters are designed to appeal to owner preferences. Cats strongly prefer unscented litters, and they can smell about 14 times better than we can. So if you can smell that fresh or lavender or whatever scent from across the room, imagine how that feels for your cat when they're digging in that space, especially if they're in a covered box. It can be pretty overwhelming. For some cats, that alone is enough to lead to misuse. So for example, the litter that you typically buy is out of stock in the style that you get it in, but they have the same thing with a scent. If you get that litter with the scent, for some cats who are more sensitive to that, that could be a reason to not use the box when you add in that new litter. Now, we do recommend the use of odor control products. That's usually fine. It's usually much less intense for your cats. Things that have like baking soda in them, for example, can be much more helpful to control odor as opposed to masking it with a scent. Other important things to consider with your litter is texture. And again, the range goes from fine sandy textures to inch-long pellets with many, many different things in between. Some cats will have strong preferences, and this is especially true for declawed cats, which we'll talk about as a special case later. And again, cats are very sensitive to texture, as with many other things with their litter boxes, and misuse can occur with sudden or significant changes in the type of litter that you're using. How many boxes do you have? The recommendation is at least 1 box per cat plus 1. So I have 2 cats in my home. I should have 3 litter boxes. This helps avoid misuse due to dirty boxes, social pressure from other cats while in the litter box, not enough boxes available where the cats need them, and lines, which we're kind of teasing about. When do you clean the box? How often is that happening? Many cats prefer boxes cleaned at least daily. Some would like them cleaned even more frequently if they can get it. A box that is full, dirty, or stinky oftentimes can lead to misuse. So even every other day may be too intense for some cats. Remember, their sense of smell is 14 times better than ours. Multi-cat households require multiple boxes, but they still require daily cleaning, even if there are more boxes available. This is because some cats will share boxes. You may have multiple cats using the same box. Some won't. And some have very strong preferences about who is using what they perceive as their box. And that can cause issues with litter boxes and can cause just all sorts of challenges. Many folks who have cats and litter boxes know that once you clean the box, you often have cats jumping immediately in. If you have multiple cats, it may result in lines. And this is where we just see how valuable a clean box is for our cats. And keep this in mind, because this can be a really great time to train your cat to use their box appropriately if they do tend to use it right after it's been cleaned. You can use that as a great opportunity to predict your cat will use the box and reward that behavior. And we'll get into that a bit later. So as we've talked about, it is recommended to wash the box itself pretty frequently, at least monthly, but really with every full litter change if you're able to do so. You want to use hot soapy water, and you do not want to use bleach, ammonia, or citrus scents, as these can be toxic, like in the case of bleach, or off-putting to our cats. So they actually may avoid the box if it smells like those things. And just as an important safety thing for humans, do not wash the box where you are preparing food. There are many toxins and different things like that that can be in cat litter and in the used litter. So do not clean the box where you're preparing food. And then with standard boxes, it is recommended that you replace the box itself annually. This is because when your cats are pawing and scratching at the side of the box, they're going to scratch it up. That gives bacteria a place to grow. And of course, the boxes themselves get dirty and stinky. So who is in the box? As we've said, some cats will share litter boxes, others prefer not to. Some cats like privacy, others don't like being boxed in. So you may have different types of boxes for different cats' preferences. Some cats respect the cat who is currently using the box, while others enjoy the element of surprise by ambushes or social pressure. And the latter of these can be a cause for misuse. So you can see here that Amethyst is very fuzzy, but in the box, and Sapphire is outside of it, impatiently waiting her turn to get inside. You can see those ears are back, and she's like, move out of the box, I want to get in. One of the big challenges for our cats is when we make changes to the box, especially if they are sudden. Any sudden changes to anything really involving the box can result in misuse. So if this means you moved it from one side of the room to the other, or you changed the litter, or you changed, if you are using scented litter, the scent, or you changed the texture, any sorts of changes like that, can cause problems for your cat. So if you are going to make a change, make one change at a time and add an additional box. So let's say, add additional box or make changes to just one of the boxes if your cats are not very particular about which box they use. You always want to make sure they have a safe box available for each individual. So let's say you want to try a covered box and see how your cat feels about it. Add a covered box to the same location generally that your uncovered box is in, and see if your cat shows a preference. Do they use the new box? Do they use the new type of litter you're trying? Do they avoid a texture or a scent or whatever it might be? Give them a chance to show you what their preferences are in a way that feels safe and will not lead to misuse. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit more about troubleshooting once you're already seeing misuse of the box. So first things first, you want to make sure that you are paying close attention to what's going on around the misuse, because litter box misuse is either medical or behavioral, and changing the box itself falls under behavioral. So medical reasons include urinary tract or GI issues, pain, age-related issues, including disease, decreased mobility and neurological diseases, which, just to be fair, are not always related to age, but can be, and impact more cats as they age. Behavioral issues, again, are changes to the box itself, stress due to other changes in their home or environment, social pressure interactions, or poor interactions with other cats in the home, any sort of fear around the box, and other challenges in the environment. So we get it. We know how frustrating and how challenging litter box misuse can feel. As we said, it's the #1 reason why cats are returned to shelters. The feeling that your fluffy best friend is being problematic is really hard to deal with. And so is the effects of that. You know, they're urinating or defecating on things in our home that they should not be doing that too. Well, it might seem like your cat is doing it out of spite or to be vindictive or something like that. The reality is that your cat is communicating significant distress. Remember, cats are clean animals. They naturally use boxes and bury their poop and things like that. So the fact that your cat is not using a box means something is wrong. And they are trying to communicate that in the loudest way that they know how. So getting upset at our cats for trying to communicate that to us can increase their frustration around whatever is going on, and it can create fear or distrust, which can exacerbate the problem and actually make it worse. So you want to be really, really mindful of that. As best as you can, I know it's always surprising when we find things like this, especially if it's the first time it's happened. Try to stay calm and try to be compassionate. Show as little or no reaction in the moment as possible, or in the immediate time following afterwards, especially if your cat is present or if you haven't caught them in the act. And as quickly as you can, seek help from your vet and a certified trainer. And I'm going to go ahead and just share a quick story around this. When it comes to first-time reactions, I had a cat in my home who had been there for about a year and a half, and I brought home a new kitten, and she was rather distressed at that. She was not pleased with this new kitten. And one day I went to go pick up some laundry and move it out to the garage, and it was quite wet. And I turned around and she was staring at me with dinner plates for eyeballs. And I just smiled and was like, okay, you go out to the garage, and like tried to make sure my body language and my voice and everything else didn't change. And she stared at me when I came back in for the next 10 minutes. She kind of followed me and watched me really closely. And I was trying so hard not to react or do anything that seemed at all different or out of character, because I didn't want to show her that her trying to get my attention in that way was successful. I acted like nothing had happened. And fortunately, that was the last time that she did that. Now, what we did do is, because I knew that she was frustrated and I knew why, I knew what was going on, I was able to, in that same day, make extra time to spend with her, make sure that she was getting space away from the kitten where she had her own downtime and didn't have to deal with kitten antics. And that seemed to alleviate some of the tension over the next couple of weeks, because we made time for that every day. So we were able to address that challenge there. But she was very, very clearly watching me and seeing if that communication was effective. So the way that we react to our cats when these things happen can make a huge difference. Now, if you've already reacted to your cat, that's okay. We can still do training and work around this to make this a more workable behavior to reduce their desire to communicate in this way and to teach them better ways to communicate, and we can encourage box use again. So just because you've reacted in the past does not mean all hope is lost. But for any future occurrences, try and keep these things in mind. Now, once you know this is happening, the very first thing you do is you go straight to the vet, do not pass go, and you might spend a couple $100s. You want to make sure that you are looking for any medical issues because these can be serious and time sensitive. Male cats, for example, are prone to urinary issues. So we want to make sure that we're not having any problems that need more immediate responses. Same with any GI issues. If you have an extremely clear and straightforward indication, it's a behavioral situation. For example, you've tossed out your old couch and you brought home a new one. Your cat jumps up and sniffs it for the first time and then pees on the cushion while hard staring at you. You actually still want to go see your vet first. And the reason for that is even if it seems very clear why this is happening, if your cat hasn't peed on other new things you brought home, like new bedding, or when you switch laundry detergents or other things like that, there may still be something going on, an underlying medical condition that has made them less capable of handling additional stress. So that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and they may be acting out because there's just too much they're trying to cope with, and that was too big of a change. So even then, go see your vet. So we just mentioned urinary tract issues are common among male cats. You might also see litter box misuse due to kidney and other GI issues. GI issues may look like diarrhea or a semi-soft stool or changes in the smell, color, different things like that. So if you're seeing poop outside the box, for example, and it does look different, that's also your cat trying to communicate, or your cat just struggling and having a legitimate accident, but definitely good reasons to go see your vet. Things that you can do prior to your appointment are track fluid and food intake. You can also pick up an indicator litter, like pretty litter, which can change colors to kind of give you an idea. Generally, it is not diagnostic about what might be going on. So it can tell you if their pH is higher or other things like that that can indicate potential issues. So it just gets your vet more information to work with. Other things that might be going on are pain, particularly related to mobility in joints, internal illness and disease, again, including urinary issues, but anytime that we feel crummy, we're going to behave differently, and our cats are no exception. Injury, so if they've hurt a paw or if some part of their body is less comfortable, they may not want to get into a box. That physical act of jumping in or jumping out may be uncomfortable for them. This also includes spinal injuries, injuries around the head and neck area, anything to the abdomen, which might touch the bottom of the box as they're jumping in. All of those types of things can play a role. And then decline, which we'll talk about in a moment. There's also age-related challenges like loss of vision that may make navigating, getting into a box more challenging. That's where that front entry box may also be valuable. And neurological diseases like dementia in cats, you may also see changes in their litter box use in those situations. Let's talk briefly about declawed cats. So we don't see this very often anymore. Most vets around the country will refuse to declaw cats because the practice is considered inhumane. I know that there are some groups that are working on actually putting this into law and making it illegal to declaw cats, except for medically required exceptions. And there are many reasons for this, including pain. There is pain in your cat's paws because we've removed the front of the toe. These cats, as a result of that, are 3 times more likely to struggle with litter box issues. This is because the litter substrate is uneven on their feet. And even if your cat doesn't look visibly in pain, it is uncomfortable and painful for them. So they will often avoid using the box because it isn't comfortable. So what you can try is using potty pads, which you would find for puppies, or the softest, finest litter possible. You're looking for the sandy ones. You want to absolutely avoid pellets, and you want to avoid large grain texture as well. A low entry box may also be helpful because you don't have to jump or climb into it. So there's less shifting in the way their weight is balanced on their paws. And you should probably talk to your vet about pain management if you have brought one of these cats into your home, because they are still wonderful cats and still need a home, but they are managing some more pain. And just as a note, the kitten in this picture does have their front paws bandaged. They have not been declawed. They are just wearing bandages. So let's dig into behavior concerns. Stress is highly stressful for our cats. And the way that they process stress from a biological and blood chemistry standpoint is significantly different from us. It can take a human about 72 hours to recover from a significantly stressful event. It can take your dog 5 to 8 hours. It can take your cat 7 to 10 days. Prolonged stress can lead to health issues and or behavior issues. And cats will often communicate significant stress by behaving out of character. This can look like increased aggression or arousal, the number 2 reason why cats are returned to shelters or end up in shelters in the first place. Withdrawal from preferred activities, dietary changes, and litter box misuse. Things to keep in mind: prolonged stress could include a cat who's new to a home and is just coping with all sorts of changes that are occurring over that period it takes them to adjust, which on average is about 3 months for any new pet coming into a home. It could be a new addition of a pet to a home. It could be moving or an owner being out of town and changes in routine. It could simply be changes in routine or different things like that. So we want to be really, really aware of that. So continuing on with our changes, again, this involves any changes to the litter box, all sorts of changes in the environment. We've already talked about moving it briefly, but newly arranged furniture, new bedding, even new laundry detergent. I've had one cat family that I spoke to who changed their laundry detergent, and the cat would pee on freshly cleaned laundry exclusively, not dirty laundry, not other types of clothing left on the floor, only things that had just been washed with the new detergent. So switching back actually made a difference. Changes to routines, again, travel, changes to work and school schedules, family composition. So whether you bring in new family members, whether it's children in the family, whether it's other family or friends or roommates moving in, whether it's people moving out, or whether that's, again, a roommate situation, kids going off to school, anything like that, and shifts in the social dynamic in the home, both between people, between pets, and all of these also include pets, by the way. It's not just people coming and going, it's also pets coming and going. And then changes to diet. That can also be a pretty significant one, because if their new food doesn't sit with them as well and they're feeling bad, they might not want to use the box, or they might struggle to get to the box in time. Social dynamics. So changes in household composition between pets can be really challenging for our cats. Having pets come and go in the home means that there are shifts in social dynamics. So if you have 3 or 4 cats, we're not judging, but if you swap, out, if one cat leaves and one cat comes in for whatever reason, you might see all of the social dynamics shift between all of the pets in that home. So you want to be really aware of any changes in those social dynamics. Now, changes might include behaviors around resource guarding or bullying and displacement. And this can happen around the litter box also. So you might see a cat who prevents another cat from getting into a specific litter box, or who will bully them, harass them, or try to get them to leave a litter box when they are in one. But they might also do this with food, with toys, with people, with bedding around the home. And a cat being prevented from going a place that they used to go or doing a thing they want to do may misuse the litter box because they are stressed and frustrated. We might also see cats hunting, stalking, or ambushing each other around the litter box, which can lead to fear. A cat may avoid a litter box because they don't want to be harassed by other cats while they're in there. So keep things like that in mind. This is also why having boxes in different places is helpful, because you're less likely to have multiple cats in the same place using the same box at the same time. So that can help with some management. We also want to be aware of what type of misuse it is. Is it the cat actively emptying their bladder or pooping on the floor? Or is it a cat who's spraying or marking? Because those are different things. Spraying and marking is typically related to social interactions with other animals. It has the primary function of marking territory and communicating with other animals in the home or even outside of it. We might see this behavior occur when there are additions of new cats or other pets in the home, when there are interactions with cats outdoors, and if a cat is trying to attract a mate or signal to others. And those two will often be more of an issue, particularly during springtime and mating season, or at least the higher point of mating season for cats out in the community. Your cat may start responding to both the hormones they may be picking up on if the windows are open, and or the vocalizations, behaviors, and sightings of more cats in their neighborhood. That can all lead to spraying and marking. And it may also occur in the home after environmental changes. You bring home a new couch, one cat rubs up against it and transfers scent, and one cat stands up against it and sprays vertically onto it. You can resolve this behavior by doing a couple different things. If your cat is not fixed, getting them spayed or neutered can absolutely make a significant difference. If there are community cats in your neighborhood that are unowned and do not already have an ear tip indicating they've been trapped, neutered, and released, you can take part in that and trap, neuter, and release those cats, which will prevent the spread of additional kittens and help reduce the mating behaviors and territorial behaviors that you see in your yard, which can help reduce your own cat's behaviors. You can use some management by reducing access to the space that this behavior is occurring in. So whether it's closing blinds and windows, or whether it's just closing the door entirely and not letting them look out that window towards where that cat tends to hang out. You can also add litter boxes to the area they're spraying in. So if they're like hanging out in the living room, a space you can't easily move them away from, and they're spraying by the couch, maybe we get a really cute little side table that also hides a litter box, and we put their litter box right there. So they can still spray and mark territory in their box, which you could train, but they're not doing it on the couch. The scent is still in the same area. And that is important. The behavior is functional. So they're spraying in that particular spot because of its relation to whatever they are marking territory around. So having the litter box across the room may not resolve the issue. Having it right near where they're already spraying can. So let's talk about fear. The box location, the box itself, the environment it's in, all of those things can pose challenges to our cats. Is the environment noisy? For example, many folks will put litter boxes in a laundry room, which can be quite loud. And it may have more foot traffic if it's, for example, also an entry point to the home. If a box feels too exposed for a cat, whether it's open or whether it's facing a high traffic area, they may feel aversion to being confined on the opposite end of the spectrum, like we've talked about. They may feel the box is difficult to access safely. So if, for example, you have a cat who's more fearful or who's new to your home, they may not be super comfortable moving through parts of the home when people or other pets are more active. If company is over, which may be related to being a new cat or a cat who's just fearful in general, there may be times when your cat doesn't feel safe going from point A to point B, where a litter box is. So keeping that in mind and making sure if they are more sensitive to whatever context, they provide boxes in the areas they're most comfortable so they can access them if they need to. Some cats become fearful of the box itself, and that often occurs due to a poor association in the box. So for example, your cat is in the box and all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off and they just have that association of using the litter box with something really scary and startling happening. Sometimes those things become related, even if there isn't a direct association between using the litter box and something bad happening. So in those cases, you might need to get a different box, put it in a different room, do training around approaching the box, interacting with the box, etc. It is trainable. We just want to make sure that we are approaching it in a way that reduces their fear and doesn't force them to use something that they're scared of. And again, there might be social fear if they don't feel comfortable using the box because of interactions with other pets, or if they feel uncomfortable using the box because of poor interactions with humans around the litter box. Now, that or litter box or eliminating behavior. So if they were in the litter box and they got spooked by a person in that space, for example, they were in there and you came in to do laundry or something like that, or a door slammed or whatever it was, they might become fearful if there's people around when they're trying to use the litter box. They may also become fearful of using litter boxes because of a reaction we've had to them going to the bathroom somewhere else. So there's a lot of ways that fear can interact with litter box usage and many, many nuances to it. So when you are faced with a situation where your cat is not using their litter box appropriately, there are a huge number of assessment questions that we can ask. And you're going to start asking these only after you've been cleared by your vet first. So when you've confirmed that misuse has roots in their behavior, you're going to start asking these questions. And like we said a moment ago, behavior is functional. It always serves a purpose. And these questions will help us gain more insight. Now, if you are interested in more information about the functionality of behavior and how to understand learning and behavior in more detail, we do have a behavior and training lecture on that topic. I'll send it to you in the follow-up. You can find it on our YouTube playlist in the meantime. So the more of this information that you can gather before reaching out to a trainer, the better. This is hardly a complete list, and many trainers will include additional questions for each of these questions that you ask. So take notes when you start seeing litter box misuse as often as you can, gather as much information as you're able to do, and we'll kind of dig through some of these. So taking note of when the behavior first occurred can be really helpful for establishing timelines. Is it urine or feces? That can definitely make a difference. How often is it happening? Is it infrequent? Is it occasional? Is it regular, daily, or every time? And keep in mind, there can be significant variation in this, especially if there is still some box usage occurring. Take note of when they are using the box and what they are doing in the box. Are they only pooping in the box? Are they only peeing in the box? You know, what does it look like? Are they only using the box when no one else is up or home? You know, take all of those notes. When is this happening? What time of day in general, morning, evening? In what context are you seeing this behavior occur? If you're able to get a feel for it, you know, if you're home or if you're seeing it happen. Where is it happening? What location is it in? Whether it's the room or a specific item or surface they're going to the bathroom on. Where is that misuse happening specifically? Do you observe any patterns based on the information above or other things that we're aware of? Have you made any changes? And we've talked about quite a few changes, so you've got a good list to start with, but assess each of those. You know, even if you don't think you've made a change, I'll ask families, because we get questions about this very frequently. I'll ask families, you know, have you made any significant changes recently? And they'll say no. And then we'll talk about it and start digging in a bit more detail and say, oh, you know what? We did just rearrange the living room, or my work schedule changed and I'm working the same hours, but I'm working different days, which we may not see as a huge change because much of the routine is the same, but for our cats, it may be enough of a change. Or I used to come home for lunch and now I don't. So keep in mind, really go through that list of changes and take the time to ask yourself, have I actually made a change? Like, could this have bothered my cat? Again, laundry detergent. Who would have thought? Okay. Are there other behavioral changes outside of box misuse? Are they still eating, drinking, and playing normally? Are they seeking out attention? Has any of that changed? Again, the food and water intake question is there as well. Any changes to diet can be a really big indicator. Are there changes to the quality of their feces or the smell of their urine? That does go back to health concerns, but there's still good things to note. If you observe this behavior happen, what is the cat's behavior or body language immediately before they misuse, during the misuse, and afterwards? So are they looking at you or not? Have they been engaging with you or another animal or not? Were they in the middle of playing and all of a sudden they went and peed? And that to me sounds medical, not behavioral. You know, there's a lot of different questions. So as much as you're able to observe their body language and their behavior prior, during, and after this, That's really helpful information to have. What has your response been, or what is your response? Is it happening as you see it happen if you're catching it, or is it happening after the fact? And that's a really important thing to note, is animals learn in the couple seconds, quite literally, like 1 to 5 seconds following a behavior. So if you aren't catching it literally as it happens, they're not going to connect the dots later. Even if you show them, even if you let them sniff it, they're not going to connect those dots, even if they are showing you reconciliatory or conflict reducing behavior. They're not, in fact, guilty. They don't have morals. How does the cat respond to you if you are responding or redirecting them in some way? And do you reward appropriate box use if that is still occurring? And then what are you using to clean up the mess? That can make a big difference. If you're not using the right type of cleaners, some scent can be left behind even if you can't smell it. So we recommend using enzymatic cleaners, which can break down the odor-causing material better. And you want to make sure you use those exactly as directed, because that can also make a big difference. All right. So management is going to be one of the primary ways that we can start addressing this behavior. We want to reduce access to spaces where the misuse is occurring. So if they're only peeing on the bed, just close access to the bedroom for right now. Don't let them continue going back there. Beds are also tough to remove scent from just because of the nature of a mattress. So remove access to a space, add litter boxes, and or shift locations if your cat isn't comfortable going into a space where the box is located now, or if it's not in a place that they typically visit in general. If it's facing a doorway, just try shifting locations and or adding boxes. Use a litter attractant. They've actually found that these can be quite effective, and there's different types of litter attractants. There's specific litter that is designed to be an attractant, and there's also pheromones that can be added as well. So there are all different types of things we can use to attract cats to litter and see if that helps. And those scents are so subtle that you won't pick them up. Give cats downtime from each other. So if the misuse is related to social interactions, give your cats some space from each other, so they're not always having access to each other all the time. So if we know that there's some bullying going on around boxes, add extra boxes and give your cats a couple hours where they're separated. They can use the box during that time with no pressure and no stress, and it can help reduce a lot of misuse behaviors. Help them prepare for changes if you know change is coming. So for example, if you know that you're going to be replacing a piece of furniture that your cat enjoys spending time on, put a blanket or a cover on that couch that will also fit the new piece of furniture coming in, or at least can be draped over it, and give them as much time as you can, honestly, to hang out on that towel or blanket or cover or whatever it is. And then when you replace that piece of furniture, put that scented item on it, and it will be more familiar to your cat. It'll smell like your cat's, it'll smell like you, it'll smell a bit like the old couch, and it will help make that transition easier. So keep things like that in mind. Depending on how large the new furniture is, if you're able to have both in the space for a short period of time, that may also help. If you're able to do so, roll back changes if you know that's what's caused the issue. So for example, you introduce a new type of litter, great, donate the remainder that you have, go out and buy their old litter and switch back to that if that's what they were comfortable with. So if you're able to roll those changes back, do so. Now, when it comes to training and specific training plans around litter box misuse, keep in mind, each case is so individually specific because it's related to whatever is going on in that cat's home, with their experience, with their health, with your interactions with them, other pets. There's so much individuality for this. The tips that I'm going to share here are pretty basic in general, but we can make some time at the end to address questions if you have them. And it's a limited amount of time, but we'll do our best. One of the things that you can always do, both before you ever see problems and if you do start to see them arise, is reward appropriate use of the box. So if you get a new box and your cat is exploring it, reward that. If you see them using the box as soon as you clean it, you can praise that too. You don't have to use food. You can use praise or affection or things like that and just encourage them to use the box. But definitely letting them know this is a behavior you want to see continue can be really helpful. If you are going to reach out to a trainer for help, reach out to a certified trainer. This is so important. Training, if you're not aware, is an unregulated field. Anyone can call themselves an animal trainer. They do not require any formal education. We are hopefully going to see some changes around that in the next, hopefully, few years. There are some groups pushing for legislature. But in the meantime, you want to make sure you're working with folks who are appropriate to work with for these types of behavior. You want to make sure you're doing this promptly as well. The more that we, or that our cats rather, have a chance to practice this behavior and do this thing, the more habitual it becomes, the more effective that communication might feel, especially if we've been reacting up to this point. So we want to make sure we're not giving them more opportunities to do this, because the more they do, the harder it will be to change in most cases. So doing this promptly is really important. Keep in mind your timelines for resolving this behavior can be significantly different. Some resolve quickly, for example, switching back to an old litter, swapping out your laundry detergent. Others might take a lot longer, especially if you are dealing with social dynamics between multiple cats or fear-based behavior around a litter box in whatever capacity. So the key is to communicate with your trainer, communicate with your vet, communicate with your cat, honestly, and be patient, because we will get you through this. But we need to make sure that we're moving at our cat's pace and that we're really being mindful of how we're doing this training. There are a lot of resources out there that can help support you through all the different aspects of this, because as you saw, many of the reasons for litter box misuse don't actually have to do with the litter box itself. So if we need to teach our cats how to communicate stress, if we need to learn how to read their stress signals better, if we need to teach them how to take medication when they're feeling crummy so they don't just express their displeasure at being held down to take meds by pooping outside the box, we can do training around that. There's all different types of resources. We have articles and videos that are free in our extensive libraries on our website and on YouTube. You can search by topic, and it includes all of our past B&T lectures. We also have training classes, most of which, unless you have very young kittens, are over Zoom, so that you can join from anywhere and you get to keep the recordings. You can work through it later. And we do both group and private lessons. Both topics will be addressed, or we can address this topic both in group classes and in private lessons, although of course in group classes it's a much smaller portion of costs. If you're a San Diego Humane Society adopter, you have a post-adoption consult. So if you haven't used that, we can begin discussing what's going on with your cats during that session. We have our free behavior helplines, where you can call and start this conversation as well and get some early tips. We also have a local certified trainer directory, which is a positive reinforcement directory that covers primarily San Diego County and a bit beyond to the east and north. We have a few folks up in LA as well, so up in Orange County and LA. And these are all vetted trainers. We've either have worked with or communicated with all of them to ensure they are using appropriate, modern, and humane training practices. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up with our behavior helpline contact information and open up for any questions that you all might have.
My cat that I adopted from the Humane Society, I work with the cat team there too, but I wanted to just get some more information from you folks. She was injured before I got her. She was hit by a car and lost one of her legs. So sometimes she has a little bit of a problem. It's an accident, like trying to poop when you only have one back leg is a little bit harder sometimes, you know, and she misses occasionally, but that's not the issue. It's more when she gets a urinary tract infection, or just they've decided she's had one of those when I first got her, and then now she just had inflammation. It wasn't bacteria, but then she's in so much pain, you know, she just goes wherever. So my question is, so I set up another box in the living room. She's got one in where she has it in her room. But I don't necessarily want to leave it in the living room all the time. Like
Right.
it's just when she's having an issue. So is that a problem for me to put it there temporarily, and then when things get better to take it away and just have the one that she's always been using?
Yeah, it depends. That's a great question. It depends on the cat. Honestly. So it depends on the cat. One of the things that I would look for is box preference. So is
Mhm.
she preferentially using the box in the living room over the other boxes? So my girls have, in the space that we have, we actually have 2 boxes, but they share both of them really well, and they're both cleaned daily. So we haven't needed to use a third. And they do show very strong preference for their automatic box. They will actually only use the other one if there's a line.
Mhm.
So for us, I would never get rid of the automatic box because they would be really stressed by that. But if she's only
Mhm.
using the one in the living room on occasion, then I think you would probably be okay to remove it. The other thing that you could try instead of adding a full box would be to add potty pads, which are much easier to put down and pick up and have fewer associations with that. And they also don't require her to climb into the box or have to deal with I'm in pain and having to get in and out of something that can cause additional pain or
Mhm.
poor balance. So I imagine if
Well,
she's
these things come on suddenly. I don't know until she's had a problem that
right.
she's not feeling good, and they're like trying new diet to see if that helps with the inflammation and stuff like that. Um, but and I know that you said 1 box plus a box per cat, but I'm retired now and I clean it out almost every time she uses it. So it's clean, it's cleaned out 2, 3 times a day. So I don't know if that's necessarily an issue to have another one. But anyway,
Yeah. So
I just didn't know if switching back and forth, you thought that might be a problem. That was my main question.
that's going to depend on your cats. And again, the recommendation is like 1 box per cat plus one. And that would be, so again, for my 2 cats, that would be a total of 3 boxes.
Right.
We're in a 1-bedroom apartment and they're perfectly happy with 2. They primarily use 1. So know your cats. If there seem to be struggles, add more boxes. It doesn't seem like it's an issue for you all. So again, because it can come up suddenly, I think the potty pads might be a good tool to use for those less expected things, and they're easy to pick up and have. And you can always put a box in the space and have some potty pads out and see if there's a difference in
Okay.
of usage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. If your potty pads are fewer changes. So.
Okay.